closing out today's presentations with someone who I'm really looking forward to hearing to. This is going to be, I think, a really interesting, just in the same way that we had Kurt Opsahl from the EFF. We're going to hear now from Isabela Fernandes from the Tor Project, another project that has got many similarities to Zcash in the sense of it being a software project and also heavily focused on privacy. Isabela has been with the Tor project since 2015, and she's been its executive director since 2018. Previously, she worked with Twitter as a product manager, so some really interesting background, and has been involved in open source software since the 90s. So please help me in giving a warm welcome to Isabela Fernandes from the Tor Project.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Isabela. I'm the executive director at Tor. I'm also original from Brazil. I don't write code for Tor, so I will try my best to answer the technical questions if there are any. If I cannot, I will make sure that somebody get back to you. So I'm here to talk about advancing human rights with Tor, and I will just talk a little bit about human rights before I get into it, and then a little bit about the threats that the human rights defenders have, and explain what is Tor and what Tor is doing to help these people, share some of the stories that we received, and of course go along, over what's going on with the Russian censorship and what's coming up next at Tor. So when you think about human rights being affected by surveillance or censorship online, you think right away about freedom of expression, you think about privacy, you think about access to information. But actually, when we're talking about advancing human rights, we're talking about way more than that. Because we're helping people, human rights defenders, who are out there fighting for different rights, reproductive rights, workers' rights, environmental rights, free elections, democracy, and all of them somehow at some point goes online in that struggle. And that's where fighting for privacy, fighting for secure connection, it's part of fighting for way more rights than just privacy or access to information or freedom of expression. And I just want to expand that mindset as we start this presentation so you can you can stop and think a little bit about everybody that you know that is out there in any type of struggle and how this is important for them. So I took this, I know it's another text, so I tried to highlight the important parts, but I took this from a report that two researchers did related to land defenders, indigenous communities in Canada and in Chile, and the type of surveillance that they are under. And also it's a very interesting report, there's a URL in the presentation, because it also talks about the effects on the human and the person when they are under such a type of surveillance. And I like to talk about what is the last one, which it talks about the technologies of the surveillance being used. And again, this is surveillance used by corporations. It's not necessarily the government, it's the private sector who have interest on those lands. And they're using social media monitoring, they're using drones flying over the territory, heat detection, and many other types of ways to surveil those people. Of course, Tor cannot help with all of them, but we're trying to help in some way with some of those. About the threats against human rights defenders, I'm very sad to share this information. Freedom House, they publish this report every year. And for 11 years consecutive, it shows that the internet freedom is declining. This is very sad. This is over a decade of just going downhill, you know? And I think you can see that as you see more news about the way people are doing internet shutdowns, censorship, or monitoring people, tracking people, and how that trend keeps on growing instead of shrinking. So I want to talk about some examples of that. Of course, everybody is familiar with the Pegasus software and how that recently, thanks to Amnesty International and other organizations, that was shown that it was targeting in unlawful way many people all around the world, from human rights defenders to policy makers in European Union, journalists, lawyers, And I think this industry, some software like Pegasus, is not only, but has a great leverage of existence because of the way the internet business model have been done, which is a way where everything that is built, all the software, all the technology, by default is producing a lot of data and just putting this data out there because they're making a business model on the top of the data. So I think that is the problem. The problem when the technology by default is creating the data and enabling that the data exists and that data can be collected and shared and sold by others. So the threat is on that. The threat is on the online trackers. The threat is on everything that is created to generate this data that is literally going out of control and is being used to change the context that we live and to manipulate so many things that Kurt, at the beginning of today, right, like he did a presentation and he was talking about people saying, oh, I have nothing to hide. And I think lately, with all the change in the context of society, elections being manipulated and so forth, I think people are understanding that privacy is not about having something to hide, but it's about the human being that you are. It's about what you like, what you dislike, what you're curious about, what you're afraid about. And the worst is when someone takes out that information and use that against you to manipulate you and to manipulate you into whatever they want to be pushing forward, their own agendas. And of course, I need to talk about data brokers. This is a huge problem in society today. It's not regulated, and they are out there collecting data and selling it, and you don't have any idea how your data is traveling around. And I want to share a story that shows a little bit about that. So Twitter, as many other companies, has the business model to sell its data and used to sell the data to data miner. Data miner is a company that, like others, collect data from multiple sources and they correlate it and they build a tool that can correlate it and create different type of alerts. It can create an alert about people's emotion, alert about topics that are rising on society, many types of alert. And they had a contract, this company had a contract with the fusion centers. Just out of curiosity, how many people here knows what fusion center is? Yes, that's alarming, but let me give you a little bit of history. Fusion Centers was created after 9/11 in a way to connect all the law enforcement intelligence, domestic intelligence, to the law enforcement in the United States to combat terrorism. However, this organization, this agency, thanks to FOIA, have been actually spying on Americans for whatever reason, for dissent reasons, for whatever reason. And I have two examples here. One, the Occupy movement, for instance, they were being spied on before even the first stand was set up in New York City. And they were giving reports to the private sector, to the banks, about this possible protest. The other one is the Black Lives Matter people and protesters. They were being organizers. They were being also monitored by the fusion centers. And these two groups of people, one is fighting for the rights of black people in the United States against racism. The other one is just fighting for a better distribution of wealth, like maybe better healthcare, better education. I don't think that really threats America, just improve America. But again, the fusion centers was abusing its power and spying on them. I also want to bring this up because this is one of the things that Snowden revealed, which is the scale of the mass surveillance and how metadata is important in that case. And this is true, right? Like they had a killing list. Every Tuesday they would meet and decide where to send the drones to bomb people and end up bombing weddings in Yemen, right? Like who only looks at metadata, sometimes has a lot of information, but sometimes also have the wrong information. So Tor mission is to advance human rights by creating and deploying free and open software for anonymity and privacy online. And let me just explain what Tor is, right? I know everybody here probably knows, so I'm not going to go through it a lot. But we are a network, a decentralized network with over 6,000 relays, a couple thousand bridges. We also are the Tor browser. We have the Tor browser, which is a fork of Firefox. And we are a nonprofit. Some people don't know that, but we are. And just like the Zcash community, we also are very strong based on the support and the work of our community, from research, development, to people teaching others about Tor, and so forth. So I like to show this screenshot of the browser because not only shows the browser like any normal browser, but also shows the secret and a little bit of the network. And it shows onion addresses, onion servers. I think onion servers is another important product we have. Like I said, most metadata is very important to think about it when you're talking about surveillance. Most of the end-to-end encryption is focused on content, not necessarily metadata. And Onion servers can be a way that you can obfuscate metadata if enhance the security of your product. So who is using Tor? I'd like to start with some organizations that are using Onion addresses because I like to show the diversity of the use case. Some here are just other tech organizations, right, like Debian, RiseUp. Some are news organizations like BBC, The Intercept. Some are social media like Facebook and Twitter. All of them have different reasons to create this Onion address, but all of them want to promote the same thing, which is security to the users and enable them to access the service even if it's censored. So data about our users. First of all, we don't collect data on our users. This is a result of a survey, the first one we did, and we got over 50,000 responses on that survey. And I think it's very interesting because it gave us a little glimpse about the people using the Tor browser. You can see here that a lot of people identify themselves as male, and people have some affinity with technology, use it every day, or very good understanding of it. I like this data here about the frequency of using the browser because you can see that at least half of these people are using the browser once a day or once a week. And that's fine for us. I think we are not in this game to fight for the market share of the browser industry. We're not in this game for that. And in this game to show people that is alternative, that is possible to build tool with privacy and security in mind for the end user. And we are very proud that some of the things that we have been doing for over a decade is now being adopted by the industry, right? Like third-party cookies, isolation, or protections against fingerprinting. We have a lot of our patches uplifted to Firefox. So we want to be able to show that north, right? Like just show that it's possible. And so again, right, like I'm happy that people are using this, but we're not necessarily super worried about taking the whole share market of the browser industry. The reason people use, they said, personal privacy, ideological reasons, or circumvent censorship are the top ones. Of course, safety for activists is there. But I'm going to share some stories that will give you a picture of what people actually mean by those answers, and I think they're very interesting. Here, again, this is not unique users count. This is just average count. So it's not like exactly how many people is connected to the network. We think, because some research that have published papers, we think there's something around 3 million to 8 million people connect to the network every given day. We don't even know if these people that we see today is the same that was yesterday, the same that's going to be tomorrow. And on the other side, you have the bridge users. Those are the users who need a way to circumvent censorship against Tor to connect to the network, which is way less, of course, but we also need to think about that. How Tor protects people. So I'm going to share a little bit some user stories, starting with circumvent censorship. So we asked people to share their story anonymously. So this is a user from Iran thanking us and saying how it really helps them access censored websites in Iran. We also have a user from China saying that helps them go against across the firewall in China and the Great Firewall. And I think it's worthwhile saying that while it might be slow connecting from China to Tor, we're working really hard to make that better and easier for people. And the Snowflake, which is a pluggable transport to circumvent censorship, was one of our main, the China case was our main incentive to develop that. This is another user saying that they live, right, like in a very heavy state censorship country, and they are in a life and death situation. So they do need to use Tor all the time. This is an activist who was in the struggle for democracy in Hong Kong, talking about how not only Tor, but other tools on our ecosystem were useful for them to keep connected and to be able to publish information to the world about the struggle there. In the case of privacy, I specifically choose these stories related to healthcare because I think it fits very well in the moment here in the United States where Roe versus Wade was revoked. And now we have a whole group of population that from out of nowhere, the context changes for them and they are at risk. And I think I want you to keep thinking about that. How you might feel, might be in a place today that you might not think you are at risk, but unfortunately, things are so, politics and in the world, right, like in general, things can change at any time, and you can be at risk and in need of these tools at any moment. So this is one of those cases, right? Here, it's a father who recommends his kids to use Tor because they're teenagers, they have questions, right? They have questions about sexuality, gender, about drugs maybe, and they don't want corporations to be harvesting those questions in order to sell that data for advertising or whatever, right? Like knowing all this information about their kids. I had this one where the person says that they specifically use Tor for medical research doctors or any medical issue they might have because they really don't want that data to be up for sale and the world to know what they have or not have as a medical condition. Here is a doctor, actually, who use Tor to research the patients. They live in a very political town. They probably have patients with high profile. They don't want anyone correlating the visits of the office with research they're doing on the browser. So they do that to protect the patient's privacy. And here are some cases about safety. So the first one is an activist. I think a lot of people think about this use case when they're thinking about Tor, where people are, like I said, many people are there fighting for rights. This person, at the beginning of the political activity, they didn't use it, and they got a lot of people arresting them from the government. So they changed the behavior to protect themselves and stay active politically. This is another person. They are in a country where censorship is not too heavy, but however, the surveillance is super heavy, so they do need to use Tor to stay anonymous on the internet. Here's another case where it's a transgender person who used Tor to search about it, and also when they were young, they used Tor to bypass the high school censorship. And here's a case of a person who is domestic violence victim, and the aggressor surveils the person, and it's spying on the person's activities online, and they need to use Tor to protect themselves in order to be able to have a minimal privacy from the abuser as they are doing the activities online. So, talking about context, right? I want to go over a little bit the Russia censorship. I think this was another moment that contexts start changing and a lot of people start to be affected out of the blue, that they were not expecting that this would be something that they would have to worry about one day. So in December 2021, last year, we learned it actually, that the Russian government was blocking our website. And this was actually based on a decision from a court order from 2017 that they implemented only last year. We detect the blocking, and it was on some regions. We work with volunteers, we work with the community, and some of them do tasks and help us understand better what's going on, and we saw that the block was different depending on the region, and sometimes was blocking only the website, sometimes was blocking out the public IP address from the network, sometimes was blocking our bridges, sometimes was blocking even Snowflake. And we did a lot of work to communicate to people what they had to do to help themselves, right, and to bypass the censorship. We actually hired someone who speaks Russian just to do that support, just to help us promote information in Russian so people could understand what to do. And at the same time, we did a campaign asking people to help users by running a bridge. And we were doing this work, we were fighting that particular case, and then in February, Russia invaded Ukraine, and that led to an escalation of online censorship all over the place, not only in Russia, but also in Ukraine, and we saw in other countries as well in the region. And I want to bring back, right, like the change of context. I think for this community, you probably saw the censorship on transactions of cryptocurrencies happening at the same time. And I think that change of context is what is important for us to thinking forward, because unfortunately, because I show it to you that unfortunately the internet freedom is on decline for 11 years. So more often we're going to see change of context in areas, in moments that you would not expect, and people being affected out of the blue. So it's important to be prepared for that. Here's some numbers regarding, this is an interesting graphic because you see on the direct connecting from users from Russia connecting to the Tor network decline as the censorship was rolling out, and the people using bridges to bypass that censorship, so the graphic goes up, right? Like, so this is important. This is one of the ways that we also identify cases of censorship at all when we see this type of behavior on the data that we have. So this is a month old. This number might be higher, but we have helped at least around 9,000 people by providing user support in Russian. We actually created a Telegram bot just for that. Not a bot, it's actually a person. And we also created a Telegram bot to distribute bridges to users to improve that reach to the users so they can acquire a bridge. And the campaign was very successful. We actually doubled the number of bridges on the network. So now we have around 2,740 bridges on the network. Another thing that I don't have the data here, but that was a huge spike, was the number of people running the web extension for Snowflake. So Snowflake is a pluggable transport that can help people connect to Tor when there is censorship. And the beauty of it is that the bandwidth that is used is actually donated by people, by anyone, just by running a web extension on the website, on the browser, and that is web extensions for Firefox and Chrome. So literally, if you install that web extension on your browser, you're donating a little bit of your bandwidth for people around the world who need that to bypass censorship. No worries, your data is not being leaked, there is no information about you being shared to that user or anything like that, but you helping people. And this is, the beauty of it is that this is, instead of like the technical need, right, like you have for running a bridge, installing the web extension, anyone can do it. Anyone can do that, and making that curve to be the lowest possible for people to contribute and collaborate, it's something very important. I would love like the people here on the Zcash community to think a lot about that, because once you do that, the power is huge. And for us, for instance, on this game, what we were trying to do is to make the cost higher for the censored and lower for us. Before, we have other types of bridges that we actually had to pay for the bandwidth, and we are non-profit, we don't have a lot of money, so we had to cap the bandwidth on those bridges because of it. And with Snowflake, we don't have that problem. We have another problem now, which is the scaling, the Snowflake pool and the brokers, how to deal with way more people sharing bandwidth, and those are beautiful problems to have. We don't complain about those. But yeah, I feel like making it easier for any person to collaborate to the bandwidth they share for the user who's connected to the network. Snowflake, what it does, it obfuscates your connection pretending to be a WebRTC connection, like a video conference, video call connection. So it's very hard for the user to just block that. Yeah, so that was one of the things that we did that show it to be very valuable in this moment. Some update about the legal case. Like I said, it was a court decision from 2017, and they never reached out to us. We had no idea this was going on. So some pro bono lawyers, I'm going to try to pronounce this, but it's probably going to be wrong. They are kind of like the EFF from Russia, and they jump in to help us, and they're doing an amazing job. They came with two arguments. One, there was no due diligence on the case in 2017. And another one, there is no real law in Russia that should be, that prohibits the dissemination of information like related to VPNs, anonymizers, tools like Tor. So they use those arguments. The court accepted, and on July 21st, the court decided to unblock Tor, which is great, and that is not a victory yet, because all that means is that, okay, that court decision was wrong, we're gonna unblock it, we're gonna have another court day. So we still need to go and have another, and fight on that day. Another thing that the government in Russia did, meanwhile, was to reach out to Google and request Google to block Tor on the Play Store. So that is another case that is going on, and we don't know yet the results of it. All hours are following the case. The audience has been postponed, and there was one recently. So it's a legal fight that is still happening. We're not sure if Google is going to comply or not. So what's coming up next at Tor? I want to share a little bit about the work we're doing. First, I want to start talking about the improvements we're doing for the user experience. These have been launched already. This is something that since 2016, we've been trying to figure out how to do it. It might look simple and easy, but it's not. So there was a lot of debates on how to implement this, but literally what this is doing is helping the user whenever they try to connect to Tor, and there is a censorship or issue to the connection, to help them figure out what to do to bypass it. Before, the user would have to go to a configuration page and do 20,000 things. Now we try to guess different things. We ask the location, or the person can put the location there, and based it on the information we're getting from community, from other people, vintage points that we have to measure, to analyze censorship against Tor, we try to guess what's the best solution for that region. This is like, my measure is not an easy thing to build, because we have, right, like a huge debate about, should we be probing the user to guess where the user is? How much of our automation we want on this tab? And also, like I said, the race is against censorship is always changing. So we have to build ways to always know what's going on in that country to provide the right option for the user. We are doing more things. One of the biggest complaints from the user is the speed. And we have recently released congestion control on Tor stable. Unfortunately, people are not seeing yet the improvement of that while they're connecting to the network, because I think like literally a couple weeks after we released it, a DDoS attack started against the network. And we've been fighting this attack for a long time now, like over a month. Every time we stop the attack in one way, they started in another. So I think to the attack path, people will not be able to see the improvements, but eventually you're going to see how much faster the Tor network is becoming with those improvements that we're making. So what else we're doing? We're working with other groups on our ecosystem. We're working with the Tor Project. We're working with Calyx Institute, Tails, and OnionShare. We're doing different works with these organizations. Some of them are related to usability, user research, and improvement of the user experience. Some of them are related to mobile. We really want to bring more and more of this to mobile. We understand, and our goal is to make it possible that Tor, most people in the world access internet through mobile and through Android. So we need to make Tor usable for those people, especially the people in the global south, the people who are at risk, the people who are seeing censorship, who are seeing laws being passed, right, like that target them. They all need support on mobile, because they're mostly using mobile to connect to the internet. So we are bringing our board to iOS. We are improving Onion browser with improving pluggable transport to work on mobile, including Snowflake. We also improving Calyx OS, which is the operating system for Android. And we are bringing OnionShare, which is a really great tool to sharing files through Onion servers and other things as well, to mobile. We're also building a VPN-like tool for Android. We are very early on the stage of building that. I had a slide in the past I forgot to mention, but one of the let me see if I can go back, maybe not. But like the top product that people are using to connect to Tor, at least on our survey, was the Tor browser for Android. But thinking about the experience, the user experience on mobile is different from the user experience on desktop. A lot of the things that you do on the browser on the desktop, when you are on mobile, that thing becomes an app. So you really need something, a product that can route those connections through Tor and isolate them, and we are working on it. But we're not working on it alone. We're working on it with the Guardian project because they have all the knowledge of building Ordbot, and we're working on it with Leap, people who build the Leap VPN as well. And we hope to continue this collaboration. I think the goal here is not to compete, it's actually to work together. We're also building RT, so I would like to give a huge shout out for the Zcash community grant for helping us get this idea off the ground. We are finishing the first year, initiating the second year of RT, which is the implementation of Tor in Rust. This project came because we had the goal to make it easy to every tool to use Tor. Going back to my point earlier, contacts can change from one day to another, and people who are not at risk can become at risk out of the blue. So we need to make it easy for any other service out there to be able to connect to Tor and use Tor and embed Tor. And RT, most of all, is very focused not only on that, but very focused on the mobile experience, right? Like trying to make it less usage of memory, CPU, and be a smaller build, all of that. And that's what we're doing. And again, I would like to huge shout out for the Zcash grant, community grant, for helping us come so far with this project. Another one that we are working is administration tools for Onion servers. Make it easy for people to bootstrap Onion servers. We have been working with a different news organization for a while. Right now, our goal, and I will talk about this later, is to work with other organizations as well. For instance, here in the United States, we are reaching out to co-ops and tech collectors who give supports to reproductive rights organization or people who provide those servers, organizations that provide those servers, to teach them that telling people to just use Tor to search for those websites is not necessary. It is a great thing, but it can do even more things. Those sites can have an onion address for those people. When they connect to the site, they are not only safe by accessing the connection, but the metadata is also being protected. And this is important because when something is censored, a lot of the tools to bypass censorship, they're not protecting the metadata. And with an onion address, that is possible. And a lot of the places where they're implementing censorship, they also have surveillance, and they want to know who is bypassing the censorship. So having that combination is extremely important. Keeping up with the anti-censorship race, right? I mentioned that we have to scale Snowflake, but we also think about different types of pluggable transport to ship that we're doing research. And we also, one of the things that we want to do moving forward this year, next year, is to invest, we have already started this, a lot on better organizing the relay community. I think when the relay operators community started with Tor at the beginning for some years, there was always some connection. Someone knew someone who knew someone. Over the time, this became very, very loose, and this open space for malicious actors to jump in and run relays. So we want to rebuild the community. We want to make the connection of the community. We're organizing a lot of relay operators meetup. We're trying to do more for that, and we are going to be trying to release different infrastructure and support for the community, right? Like, and when I say infrastructure, I'm not talking necessarily about, oh, we're going to build this tool or that tool. I'm just talking about people's time, right? Like people's dedication time to organize the community, to answer questions from the community, to be available to write documentation for the community, not just document, right? Like how the community operates and governance of the community. And we're doing much more, right? Like what I said before, we don't collect data from our users. So for many years now, Actually, in 2016, we set ourselves with the goal of expanding our community in the Global South. And at that time, there was no UX team at Tor, or none of that happening at Tor. So we decided to create a team. We decided to couple this team with our community team, because the community team was starting to travel to countries in the Global South and train people about Tor. So a UX person would go with them and learn how, like, do interviews with folks, learn the pain points, sometimes bring a new UI for folks to test in front of us, like, and show to us if it's working, our hypothesis or not. And this work has been going on, like I said, for many years now. We are in a beautiful state where we have now the people, the connections, and the organizations from the Global South that at first we were teaching them about Tor. Now that they're teaching other people by themselves about Tor, and we're giving small amount of financial support, but we're giving them the financial support so they can keep up with the trainings, keeping up reaching to the base and the community that they organize. And now we are entering a stage where we are making sure that they know each other in the region. So we're doing regional meetups for them to meet each other and build that community link. I think this is an extremely important work for Tor, to have this part of Tor to be with the human being, directly interacting with the human being, teaching the human being, learning from the human being, not just much be focused on just building the technology, right? And earlier today, people were talking about the same thing here at the Zcash conference, at the Zcon, about how it's important to teach people, educate people about Zcash so they can adopt Zcash. So I think if people want to talk to me about this work that we're doing, how we started this, I'll be happy to share about it. But this is one of the things. Another thing that we're doing, we have for 3 years now a network health team who is very active on monitoring the network and making sure that they kick out bad relays, and they are doing this, also building different protections for attacks like DDoS attacks and so forth. So those are other areas of Tor that is slowly but is growing, and we are investing on it and making sure that it's there and exists to help people. I think I went a little bit too fast on my presentation because I tend to talk fast, but this is it, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if people have questions.
So some of the questions that have come through on Discord. What are the practical risks for Tor bridge operators? Very little, actually. First of all, the relay operators, all the relays that build the Tor network, they're public, right? So we have a consensus, and anyone can see those addresses. The bridge IP addresses are not public. And also, you are not, you're just helping the person to connect to the network. So most of the issues that happens with operators is related to the operators who are managing the exit nodes, because there's a lot of different type of requests coming out of that. And sometimes law enforcement see a request that they are investigating, and they go after that source, right? So actually, the risk for a bridge operator is very, very low. In the future, could folks who run Tor nodes be compensated with Zec in a way, the Zcash coin, in a way that promotes privacy and human rights? Is that something you've ever thought about? Yes. So we had a long discussion. This is in the back here. Eventually, we're going to figure out how to do that. But we have been thinking a lot about sustainability, right? Like, we're not thinking about, oh, you're going to run a relay and you're going to become a millionaire. No. But we at least would like to have a way that also, so I'm going to tell you a story. Remember when you were at school and there was this graphic about an ecosystem that had like a lake, the sun, the plants, and the fish, how everything contributed to one to the other? We wanted something like that. So we wanted a way where there is a bucket where people deposit funds, and the community can elect how these funds goes to the different operators, in order that this would be also advised by our network health team, advised in a way that
we need more diversity on our assets, or we need more diversity on location. So people would invest on relay operators who are running relays in different assets, or running relays in locations that we don't have relays, so that that diversity can grow and the network is more secure and healthy. So we would like to have a way where people can use the management, like the community could vote and get the management of the fund being distributed to operators according to what would benefit the network, right? So no idea how to get there yet, but it is a thing that we have been discussing inside Tor, and we're wondering about like how we can get there.
Sounds like a potential future line of collaboration. You mentioned improving governance of the Tor community. What are the challenges and ideas that you have there?
So right now, there's a lot of challenges. We're starting slow. One of the things that we are doing right now is just meetups, right? Like, so we organize the meetups. Sometimes when we see someone coming like with a big family, right, like a lot of relay operators, we reach out to them. We say, hey, let's jump on a video call. You don't need to be on video, but we just want to talk with you, understand, right, like who are you and so forth. And just by doing that, we are already like spooking the bad folks, you know, the malicious ones, or catching them because they don't show up and stuff like that. Eventually, we want to have some code of trust, I could say. We want to develop this with the community, but those are the kind of things that are also expectations for relay operators, so it's very clear what we expect from your ethics and so forth as we are collaborating with the network. So those are things that we will develop with the community, and hopefully this will be in place and the community will adopt it moving forward and will enable us to do this relationship building more practical, and also would not be a surprise to nobody that we are doing those things, those meetups, and reach out to somebody, because this will be in the code of trust, in the expectations of a relay operator.
Cool. And we're running out of time. This will be the last question. Tor is often associated with illegal or highly stigmatized topics, much like Zcash. What are some positive ways that we talk about Tor to counter that narrative? And I guess the question is, how do you guys manage that perception of Tor?
Yes. So one thing that I talk with people, first of all, I hate the term dark web, and I always tell people, please don't use that to talk about Tor. It's a way, right, like to just an easy way that the media creation make things bigger than they really are. Anyways, but one of the things that I tell people is when they tell me like, oh, but anonymity, like someone being anonymous, that can lead to criminal activity, that can lead someone to do bad things. And then I remind them that one of the pillars of democracy, it's the anonymous vote. Your vote is secret. Nobody knows who you voted for. And that is like one of the pillars of democracy that we have. And Kurt earlier ran through other reasons why being anonymous in a democracy is extremely important for you to exercise your right as a citizen in the society you are. So I think that is my main point, to help people remember that those values already exist in our society before we even created Tor. And it's very important to protect.
Can everybody please join me in thanking Isabela?
Thank you.